Welcome back to the Strength and Speed podcast. I'm your host, Mudgear Battle Alliance Pro, and Strength and Speed owner Evan Preparis. Been not recording for a while, been kind of busy. Squeezed out a quick episode last week for just kind of giving you an update, and managed to squeeze in another one this week, something I've been trying to get in for a little while now. Before we get to him, though, quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode brought to you by Mudgear. If you're not familiar with Mudgear, go over and check them out. I'm not sure what you've been up to because they're all over the OCR world. You can now use code BOTL space fan, so bottle fan, as in Battle of Alliance fan, to save 10% off Mudgear. They got socks, they got car seat covers, they got T-shirts. I have a sneak. Am I allowed to say what the new product is? I don't know. There's a new product for men coming out. I'll say that. So keep an eye on Mudgear, and then keep an eye. We'll be testing some of them over here at the Mudgear Battle Alliance Pro Team before it is released to the public, making sure it's good to go, and we'll put it through the paces there. And then on top of that, they just hired 2 new people on their staff. So if you're watching the Go Rec games, and you might have seen Kristen doing some of the live covers there, and there's also Mike also working on kind of the backside, some of the publicity type stuff. So big things happening there. The company's expanding. They're doing great. It's great to see, especially post-COVID. So super excited for the future of Mudgear and all the stuff they have in store. Let's get to today's episode. Joining me, I got Richard Carson. I first met Richard at Infinite Hero College Station. So he is a recipient of Infinite Hero Foundation, a combat veteran, and quadriplegic. Richard, welcome.
Yeah, how's it going, Evan?
Pretty good. I hadn't met you before the Infinite Hero event, and like most combat veterans, we talked for about 15 minutes, and then I was like, oh, this guy's great. You know, like immediate bond I felt with you, and it was great having you at the event.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It doesn't take long for 2 combat vets to figure out if they're going to get along or not. You know, it's like you said, 5 minutes, and you know.
Yeah. So let's so Richard's done. Obviously had some combat injuries, and then but he has done some Tough Mudders in the past. So we're going to start off talking about some combat stuff and his injuries, and then talk about some of the process there, and we'll just kind of shoot it for a while. So Richard, S6E8 Whiskey, which is a combat medic, did a deployment to Afghanistan. So let's pick up kind of why you entered the Army initially, and then we'll jump to the deployment.
Yeah, so I was a firefighter EMT in Arizona right out of high school, trying to go full-time, and the place where I lived in Arizona, they just couldn't afford to hire anybody at the time just because of the way the market was and tax cuts and things. And so I joined the Army as a medic, figuring I'd do my time and then go back to the fire department. So I joined as a medic, and I went to basic, went to AIT. I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where I was with 4th Infantry, and found out that I was deploying about 2 months later. So I deployed to Afghanistan, and I spent just short of a year as a line medic for a light infantry unit there. And April 17, 2010, we were on patrol, and we went in to clear a compound that was going to be used for Overwatch later that night. And when we went through, I went through a doorway first, and one of my team leaders came through the same doorway behind me. He stepped on an IED that I had missed or something, but when I went to the doorway, it didn't go off. When he came through, it went off. So he ultimately ended up passing away. He made it to Kandahar, and I was injured in that. So little rundown of my injuries. I lost half my thigh on one leg. I lost half my calf on the other leg. I had a colostomy bag for about a year. I spent about a year in a wheelchair, 3 years on a cane, relearning and rebuilding the muscle to be able to walk again. My right hand, I degloved the palm, so all the skin and everything off the palm was gone. They had to do grafts and transplants to fix that. So basically reconstructed my whole right hand and blew out both my eardrums to the point that they had to actually replace them through surgery. So it was quite the injury, and it took me about 2 years as far as a med board process to actually retire out of the Army in 2012.
Wow. So do you remember that incident clearly, or because I was talking to another combat veteran who was injured, and he can't remember anything from his injury. Like there's a several day gap in time.
So yeah, Yes and no. So I remember the whole incident, the way it happened and everything. So when it happened, being the medic, my sole job was to take care of my guys when they get hurt, right? That's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
So when I got injured, there was physically nothing I could do to care for my buddy. And in fact, there was actually a third guy injured that we didn't know at the time. We found that out later as the helicopter was taking us away, that there was a third guy injured. But when all of this took place, I remember the whole incident very well. And even though I was injured, I would not let anybody treat me because I wanted to make sure that one of my guys was taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So I was directing care to the best of my ability based off of what I was being told his injuries were, until another medic was able to show up on the QRF force and actually get out there to help out. So I remember all of that. I remember getting on the bird coming in and landing. I remember we took off. We circled around. We landed back down because there was a third gentleman that was injured as well that at the time nobody realized because he was helping to treat patients. So his injuries were enough to send him home, but he was able to actually return to duty eventually. And so I remember all of that. Now, once they started pumping me with meds on the bird, it starts getting a little fuzzy there. I remember getting to Kandahar, and I remember about coming off of a stretcher because they tried to take my chewing tobacco away and told me I wouldn't need this anymore. And I said, "You're out your damn mind." And they tried to take my pocket knife away, and I said, "Nope, I still need that too." And they said, "Not where you're going." And then kind of gets a little fuzzy from there. I remember waking up at one point and my platoon was there in Kandahar, which is about a 3-hour truck ride from where we were stationed at. So I remember seeing some of the guys there, again, kind of in and out from there. I wound up in Bagram, and at the time, my PA, my physician's assistant that I worked with, happened to be in Bagram for something. So when I got there, I woke up at one point and he was at my bedside, and I was like, "Sir, what the hell are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." And then again, kind of in and out for a little bit, and then next thing you know, I kind of woke up in DC. So I skipped over Germany, all of the normal routes, because that's when that volcano went off in Europe.
Oh yeah.
So I woke up in DC. And my mom was there and everything. And, once I got to D.C. with all the meds that they had me on, I don't remember all of the details. It gets a little fuzzy there because I was kind of in and out of, with everything, with all the surgeries and whatnot that I was going through. So, but as far as the actual injury at the time it happened, I do remember all of that part.
Gotcha. Now, I love what you said about and I'm not surprised, again, based off the day we spent together, I'm not surprised that you were injured and you were still trying to do your job and make sure everyone else was good to go. That's just, again, one day of knowing you, and I feel like that's totally on personality for you.
Yep.
And, it reminds me of a lot of the guys I worked with. So, yeah, just thank you. And some pretty, just insane injuries there. So, physically, you mentioned some of the recovery very briefly. Talk to me a little bit more about psychologically, right? Because I mean, we come from a type A personality, right? I can do everything by myself. Right. What was, how did you kind of work through that, or are you still working through that? Talk to me a little about that.
Man, that's a tough one. That's a daily thing, and I still have good days and bad days. At the time, I told myself I was the worst medic in the world. My guys didn't deserve me because I failed them. After what happened in Afghanistan, I went down a dark road. I was drinking real heavy. I mean, I was pretty much ready to check out and pull the trigger. It was tough on me, especially when everything happened and I couldn't treat my buddy. And then I started doing a therapeutic horseback riding program. through the Wounded Warrior Battalion there at Fort Lewis, Washington. And it was kind of one of those where they said, well, you got to do something. You can't just sit in the barracks all day. And I said, well, I don't want to do anything. I want to check out. So I figured, all right, I'll go out here for a day. I'll say I tried it and check out later. So I tried it. You know, I kind of grew up around horses, so it wasn't something new to me. But the therapeutic side of it was something that was new to me in a way. So once I went out there and did it, you know, it had a huge impact. So I started doing that on a regular basis and, you know, wound up as a participant. Eventually I wound up as a volunteer and helping to teach classes and help other veterans with it, and got myself a service dog. So that's kind of what started turning things around, you know, and I still had struggles, and part of it was just figuring out, you know, what am I going to do now? It's my whole identity was wrapped up in being a firefighter and doing that thing. I lived at 100 miles an hour, you know, I'm total adrenaline junkie.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got injured, you know, I'm on a cane, I'm in a wheelchair, like my whole past was wrapped up in racetracks, working safety crews, construction, lumber yards, just a lot of physical manual labor type stuff, and the fire department and everything. And so I ended up going to school, and I went and got my nursing license and ended up becoming a nurse. And, you know, just between going to school and really just fighting the horses and that and doing that kind of thing, finding ways to volunteer to give back to other veterans that were having a hard time, letting them know, hey, you know, you're not alone. You know, there's others of us that have been there and gone through it, and you know, we've managed to pull through. And I'm not saying what worked for me is going to work for you, but let's give this a try. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. You know, and you said some of the, you know, like after it happened, you were thinking like I'm the worst medic ever, blah blah blah. You know, and you know, I know those wounds are deep and can affect for years beyond like the initial incident. So you know, from another one combat vet to another, like definitely not true. And we all know you can call it luck, you can call it God's providence, you can call it whatever you want. But there's, you know, I have multiple stories where it was like a hair away from triggering something, or, you know, my guys were a hair away from triggering something. And it's just like, why didn't that go off today? I don't know. You know, maybe someone was looking out for us. Maybe it did go off because you're the type of guy who could physically handle something like this, and someone else it would crush, you know? So who knows? Who knows?
There's that. Another part of it is, you know, it's like people will say, oh, so, you know, so you got blown up once, and it's like, well, that's part of it, you know, because one sent me home, but that doesn't include the other times that we got blown up, so to speak, to where you're in the concussion zone, you know, you're in the blast radius, but you maybe didn't get an injury.
Right.
You know, so some of that doesn't get taken into account sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, my vehicle's been hit directly, and my convoy's been hit, like, you know, within a vehicle or two of me from my location, I don't know, half a dozen times, something like that, right? So, yeah. It's like a Russian roulette a little bit, you know? Spinning the...
You know, yeah.
You're spinning it sometimes.
At the time, you really don't think about it because, you know, it takes a certain type of personality to go into combat arms, you know, infantry, medic, that kind of thing. You know, it takes a certain kind of person.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And what's funny is, like, I came back from my first two deployments, and I was like, yeah, you know, like, there was no like really close incidents, and like the more times that has passed and the more I've been kind of removed from those like line positions, the more I look back and I'm like, yeah, I guess there was some close ones. You know, like, but again, you're caught up in that A-type personality where like it becomes the norm, and it's like, oh well, you know, this happened to me, but let me tell you a story about one of my friends who something else happened to, and it was a lot closer.
And the other part of it too is, I mean, when you join and you go into that type of a job, you know, you're basically saying, hey, I'm putting my life on the line. So when you go there, you know, if I go out on patrol and I'm scared every day,
Yep.
I'm not doing the rest of my guys any good. So you get to a certain point where, the gunshots are going off, the IEDs are going off, and you're like, oh, whatever.
Right.
That was 20 foot away. No biggie.
Yeah, like I had 20 more feet of space. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, right. It's like getting into theater, Afghanistan, Iraq, doesn't matter where it is. It's the first couple of days you're there, some places have the sirens that go off for incoming rounds. The first time you hear it, you're running for a bunker. 2 months in, you hear it come off and you listen. Oh no, that's a mile away.
Right.
You're sleeping right through it, and you're like, why are you guys getting up? Why are you even worried?
I to be honest with you, I never got out of bed. I would just lay in bed. I slept in a tent on my second deployment, and it was like, well, if I stand up and run, I'm going to be a bigger target, and I'm just going to lay here and pull my covers a little higher.
We're at a small platoon base, not a huge place like Kandahar. We're at a smaller place. I mean, we get stuff like that. I mean, there's times where you're literally in your boxers and a vest coming up on the wall because something's going on. You're like, is this important? No, this ain't a big deal. All right, go back to bed, boys.
Yeah. All right. So, pretty serious injuries. Obviously, a lot of psychological, hurdles to overcome there. Tell me about kind of how things progress from there and the next injury.
So from there, I told you I went to nursing school, got my nursing license. So I ended up going back to work eventually. I wound up working at a nursing home for dementia and psych patients. Never somewhere I thought I wanted to be, but it actually worked out really good. I really enjoyed it. I would have preferred trauma, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as an LVN, it's a little harder to get into those roles because I didn't have the full RN. But I was still working on it. I moved to Pullman, Washington on the east side of the state. And so once I got out there, again, kind of went downhill a little bit again, just because I had moved somewhere new. I didn't have my support system, didn't know anybody. Once I got out there, I started volunteering with a therapeutic horseback riding program through Washington State University. And so I started doing that again. I started helping to teach classes for kids and adults with disabilities. Started working on trying to start up a veterans program. Ended up getting my own horses. So I had 2 of my own horses. My ex-girlfriend now had 2 of her horses. So, we were real active and all that stuff. I went back to work, wound up as an assistant director. And then I finally recovered enough from all my injuries. I was throwing 100 tons of hay in the summer, pretty much fully active, full able-bodied again. I got back into volunteer firefighting. I did that for about 2 years, roughly. And then in 2017, it was January of 17, I was actually on my way to work, and I don't know exactly what happened 100% on this one, but I rolled my truck down an embankment, and I broke C5 through T3 in my neck and became a quadriplegic. Now, I don't know if I hit ice. I don't know if I fell asleep. I don't know if I blew a tire and had a PTSD thing. I mean, it's really hard to say what happened exactly, but I remember being midair and saying, holy shit, this is going to hurt. And then laying across the front seat of the truck and realizing I've got a broken neck and I can't get to my phone and this isn't good. And this was 6:30 in the morning, roughly 5:30, 6:30 in the morning. And I'm in the middle of nowhere because the nursing home was in a real small town, little farming town. It's January in Washington, snow on the ground. The farmers, they're not out working the fields yet. So it was, I'm going to say probably 2 hours before somebody actually found me, give or take. because in that part of the country, you know, it doesn't get daylight in the wintertime till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock sometimes, just depending. And it was daylight when someone finally found me and was able to call the fire department and get me to the hospital. So,
Jeez. And how many months or years after the initial Afghanistan injury was this?
so that was 2017. It was January of 17. So, I mean, almost 7 years.
Okay. You know, you mentioned something prior before we started telling the story about how like kind of your road, you know, to getting better wasn't linear. You know, you had good days and bad days, and sometimes you get the slumps. And I think that's kind of like important for people to know. Anyone that's having, you know, personal challenges in their lives, right? Like no one's path is linear, whether it's emotional health, fitness, you know, whatever, right? Like it's not a line. It's just it's an up and down, and you know the difference is where it's trending. Is it trending up or is it trending down? You know.
Oh, and it's a constant. Even today, you know, it's what, 22.
Yep.
You know, I'm 12 years past the Afghanistan injury. I'm 5 years past the broken neck, and even today, I still have good days and bad days.
Mm. So tell me about some of the, I guess, again, as much as you want to share, and I know we were talking about some of the medical challenges you have. So if you have small children, this might not be the appropriate time for them to listen. Tell me some of your medical challenges from the broken neck injury.
Man, some of those. Let's see, where do I start? So when I first left the hospital, this was back in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I went home. It was me and the girlfriend. We went back to our place. We were supposed to have home health care. Well, that didn't pan out. Ended up with a pressure sore on my toe. And I wound up going into the community living center in Spokane, Washington. And they found that particular sore wound up with a bone infection in it called osteomyelitis, which is basically it's a bone infection that's real hard to heal. So I ended up cutting my little toe off. So that's one of them. Another one is, you know, I've got to do a bowel program every other day because things just don't work right. So I've got to do a suppository in the rectum, you know, every other day and do digital stimulation. So there's that. You know, I never thought I'd have so many things up my ass in my life, but you know, hey, it is what it is, right?
Jeez.
Can't do much about that. Let's see. Some other things I've had. Let's see. I went from having a catheter, an indwelling catheter called a suprapubic catheter. I had that for about 4 years until I progressed to enough that I was finally able to start self-cathing. So once I got rid of the catheter that was in all the time and using a leg bag, now every 3 to 4 hours I actually have to self-cath and stick a tube through the tip of my penis, up the urethra, and into the bladder to drain my bladder. Another one that I've had back in 2020, beginning of 2020, I spent about 6 months in the hospital for a pressure sore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bar on the back of my chair for folding the backrest down, and you know, one thing led to another, and somehow I wound up sitting on that bar for about 2 months without knowing it, and got a real nasty sore back there. They had to do flap surgery and all kinds of plastic surgery in that to kind of heal that up. Yeah, I mean that's some of the big ones, you know.
Yeah. Wild. So tell me, you know, you're recovering from this Afghanistan injury. Things are progressing, you know, generally on an uphill climb, and then you essentially get reset back to zero here with like another just insane injury. Talk to me again a little about the psychological impact of like, you know, just taking a huge.
I'll tell people, and it sounds kind of fucked up to say this, but thank God I got blown up in Afghanistan before I broke my neck. And the reason I say that is physically, the broken neck is 10 times more difficult injury to come back from as far as what I can do, can't do, everything like that. The mental side of it, though, is no different because, yeah, it's a massive injury, but mentally it's no different, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain, but having been through it once before, it's not like I didn't have practice, so to speak.
Gotcha.
So going into this one, it actually made things, I'm not going to say easier, because again, there's good days and bad days, and I did go down a pretty dark path in the beginning just with the initial part of it. You know, I was positive, and then all of a sudden, once I got home, I went downhill real quick. But again, having been through it before, I realized it. I was like, you know, I got to start doing something to pull myself out of this. You know, I know this sucks right now, but I've been here before. There's a way to get out of it. You know, this is not the end of the world. There is still some hope. I'm not dead. I've still got some functional ability. I can still do stuff. I just need to find a new way of doing things.
Gotcha. Yeah. Just taking it all in. I mean, yeah. You know, that mental perseverance you show in your personal life, you know, I think, you know, it just speaks volumes. I'll just kind of say that, you know, in a lot of our training, they talk about the importance of like perseverance and for special operation stuff and like operating, you know, in case you get captured and stuff like that. And like, essentially it makes a difference. And if you've read, there's a book by Nick Rowe, who's a POW for 5 years. He has stories where he's like persevering and someone else shows up and basically gives up hope immediately, and they're dead within like a couple months. And, you know, 5 years later, This dude's still there. So,
right.
Obviously that's like an extreme example. The kind of the opposite extreme, the less extreme is right. Like just regular endurance races, obviously, things are going to go wrong. And, you know, people who persevere will make it to the finish line, obviously. And, yeah. All right. We're going to jump ahead again. And so I get a call. All right, there's going to be a quadriplegic coming to Tough Mudder College Station. He's going to follow me along. And I was like, okay. Like, not sure how this is going to work. Because my understanding quadriplegic was like absolutely no functioning arms, legs. So tell me like the proper definition here. Because you have some functionality, right?
Right, so I do. So the definition of a quadriplegic, in layman's terms, to put it simple, it's somebody that has all 4 limbs affected. So
Gotcha.
there's different levels of quadriplegic based off of where your injury is in your spinal cord. Some guys have no functional ability whatsoever other than they can move a joystick with their hand. Some don't even have that. They might use their tongue or their chin because that's the only thing they can move to be able to move a manual or a power chair. So I'm C6, C7, so I've got pretty good functional ability. You know, I'm at the gym doing CrossFit. I play wheelchair rugby. I still work horses. I volunteer for Paralyzed Veterans of America. I wound up taking a job with them, advocating for spinal cord rights. I mean, it all just depends on the person's ability because there are different levels.
Gotcha. So anyway, you show up with this and someone's like, you got to check out his truck. And I'm not a big car guy, but I know a nice truck when I see one. So tell people what your truck is.
So I got a 2018 Chevy Silverado, a 3/4 ton pickup, 4-wheel drive, off-road bump. I mean, I put it all kinds of places. I hunt, I fish with it. So I actually drive it from my wheelchair, from my manual chair. So both sides, on the driver's side, both the front and back door open up like the Lamborghini Gullwing style door. And then there's a platform that my wheelchair sits on that swings out about 45 degrees and drops to the ground to get me behind the wheel.
Yeah. It looks like a giant transformer. I was like, oh my goodness. Like the whole side of the truck opens up and the platform comes down. So it was pretty cool. Not gonna lie. So tell me a little bit about your experience watching Infinite Hero, just some kind of external observations from a third party.
So, you know, the group that we followed, they were they were an entertaining bunch. So it was a bunch of young cadets from the ROTC, and obviously they work together pretty well because they've been doing it for a while. They were not always the smartest bunch on how they attacked their obstacles, but they had the brute strength to be able to just power through it. So it was an interesting group to watch. I'll give it that. There was definitely some easier ways they could have done things, but being young and having that strength, it was nice to see them work as a team to complete the obstacles.
Yeah, playing to their strengths, they're a bunch of future officers and hard charging Marines, right? The majority of them are going to the Marines, so they love that full frontal assault. So, right on. All right. Obviously, I can't say above. All right. Let's talk about Infinite Hero. So when does kind of Infinite Hero come into the picture, and talk to me about some of the benefits you received?
So I actually received what's called an iBot wheelchair from them. It's actually a pretty cool chair. So it's got Segway technology built into it, so it'll actually balance up on two wheels, so you can actually get eye to eye with everybody. It'll go up and down stairs if you put it in a mode. It's got a 4-wheel drive. It'll go up and down a 4-inch curb with no ramp whatsoever. It's actually a really cool chair for guys that are disabled, for getting them back into the outdoors. I mean, I use it for a lot of outdoor stuff, just places that aren't very accessible, because I can get out there and do some of the things I used to love to do. So I got contacted by a friend of mine's mom because they were looking for recipients for this chair. And she asked me, do you mind if I put you in to receive this chair? I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know who it was through. I said, sure, no problem. I don't mind at all. So she puts me in for this chair, and I kind of forgot about it, and this was going into 2020 when this happened, and I'm in the hospital with my pressure sore, and I get this call from Infinite Hero Foundation from somebody in their program that said, I'm going to be getting this chair. All right, cool. So it actually worked out really good timing-wise, because I was in the hospital, so I was able to do all of the seating stuff and everything to get the measurements to my therapist that they needed to actually get fitted for the chair. And then when they told me I was getting the chair, I also got a deal called an ant lift for the bed of my truck, because they had partnered with this other company. So the ant lift's pretty cool. It's a lift in the bed of your truck that works like, if you ever seen a dump truck with the tarp and the arms that come back, kind of works on the same principle as far as how it comes back. And it's got a winch on it, and it'll lift anything up to 1,000 pounds up into the bed of your truck. So because I was getting the iBot and I had a pickup, this device also came with it as a way to be able to make sure I could get it in and out of my truck, which was pretty cool. Now, a little bit of funny backstory on that. The gentleman that owns the ant lift company, I'd actually met him previously in the Buc-ee's gas station parking lot in Bastrop, Texas, just randomly.
Okay.
And I got a hold of him. This was before I knew I was getting the iBot, before I knew I was getting this ant lift. It was about 2 weeks before all this. I had sent the gentleman an email just to get information on the lift, because we just hadn't been able to touch base because he was busy and that and everything, and sent him an email. He goes, hey, man, I'm going to call you, like, blah, blah, blah. Well, then, no shit, 2 weeks later, I find I'm getting this iBot. And I'm like, oh, well, you're also going to get an ant lift. And I'm like, wait a minute. Hold on. I know this guy. But it kind of took me a minute to remember his name. So as soon as I get off the phone with them telling me I'm getting all this, I called up John, the guy that owns the ant lift company. And I'm like, hey, John. Hey, Richard. Like, what's going on, man? Sorry I haven't gotten hold of you. I'm like, hey, man, you're building me a lift. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, man, I'm getting an iBot through Infinite Hero Foundation, and apparently it comes with an ant lift. So kind of a small world there, just randomly met a guy at a gas station, emailed him, and then 2 weeks later find out I'm getting all this stuff. So, but like I said, I mean, long story short there is, I mean, the iBot itself, I mean, it's a phenomenal chair. And, you know, I did have to go back east to New Hampshire to do some training to receive it.
Hmm.
But since getting that chair, I mean, I've used it all over the place, especially in rural areas where there's just not a lot of wheelchair accessibility. Because I'm not the kind of guy that goes to big cities that are accessible. I like hunting and fishing and going places where wheelchairs have no business being.
Love it. Love it. So tell me a little bit about what you're up to now. You know, are you working again? Did you go back to work after the injury, et cetera?
So yeah, man. So you know, it's been 5 years since I broke my neck. So in the beginning, I didn't work. I wanted to, but it was just real tough. I had to figure out how to live with my injury again, figure out how to have fun. So started doing some rugby, wheelchair rugby, doing a lot of sporting clay, shotgun shooting, rifle shooting, hunting, fishing, just kind of lived it up for a little bit. And then I started volunteering with Paralyzed Veterans of America with the local chapter here in Texas first, and just different roles. I worked as a hospital liaison for a little bit, kind of just talking to patients, figuring out what we could help them with, and kind of relaying their concerns to the service officer to help them out. From there, I wound up working as a satellite director for the San Antonio chapter and kind of helped running that for a little bit. And then from there, I went into being a field advisory committee member. So PVA will go in, they'll do interviews and meetings with all of the spinal cord hubs throughout the VA across the country. And with that, they usually have a member from PVA that's in a chair. So that way there's somebody that's in a chair just to get that perspective on things throughout the meeting. So that kind of put me in a unique position to where I was doing the site surveys, I was doing all this stuff, and then a position opened up in the medical services committee as a paid position in which you had to be a nurse, you had to have involvement with spinal cord and certain criteria to meet the job specifications. And because I didn't let my nursing license lapse, I was in a unique spot that I fit all of the criteria and was actually able to take a paid position with Paralyzed Veterans of America, advocating for veterans with spinal cord injuries to get better care within the VA system. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, because who better to be passionate about some of that stuff than a guy in a chair in the first place? And it kind of allowed me to put a lot of the stuff that I was doing already, advocating and helping other veterans out, into a new position to where I could even have possibly a greater impact over the long run.
Yeah. I was going to ask one more follow-up question, you know, like what good has come out of your injuries, but I think you partially answered it. Is there anything else you want to kind of add to that?
Where do I start? What good has come from my injuries? Well, that's a tough question. So I've almost died several times, you know, with everything going on. So what goods come from it? Honestly, I don't know if I'd be the person I am today if it wasn't for my injuries. It's kind of counterintuitive, you know. I'm a positive person, you know. I always look for the best way to deal with stuff just because of who I am. And I've been through a lot of really tough situations. You know, one of the things we didn't touch on was the situation with my dad where he committed suicide when I was 18. That's a whole nother story. But, you know, it's part of my injuries has taught me that, you know, there's a way to adapt and overcome from anything. The thing is, you have to apply yourself and figure out, okay, here's what I got. What can I do? And at that point, your mind is the only limitation. If you want to do something, if you put your mind to it, there's a way to do it. I don't care if it's fishing, cooking, hunting, driving a car. I mean, I don't care what it is. If you really want to do something, if you put your mind to it, there's a way to do it.
Yeah. Powerful. Well, Richard, man, I mean, moving story and some great lessons there. The one question I'm gonna ask that I did not prep you for, which I asked most of my listeners, is tell us something people would be surprised to know about you. And honestly, I feel like almost everything you've told me has been surprising. But if there's anything kind of unique or funny,
people would be surprised.
Yeah.
I got one for you.
Okay.
Junior year of high school, I moved to Arizona.
Okay.
New school, new town, new kid on the block. Somebody told me I didn't have the balls to be a cheerleader. So my junior year of high school, I was a cheerleader for both football and basketball.
All right.
Now, having met me, I'm not the kind of, you figure I would have played football, I would have done all this, that, and the other. No, I was a cheerleader for football and basketball in high school.
All right. Did that, with keeping it PG, did that work in your favor for meeting women?
Keeping it PG, yes, it did.
Nice.
Now, with that being said, I also lived in the Lake Havasu area, and if you're familiar with the area, you'll understand what that means. But again,
I'm not. Yeah. Okay.
So Lake Havasu is a very big spring break town.
Okay, gotcha.
Where I was also a firefighter and had to go out on the river a lot.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, being a cheerleader, it definitely helped.
Right on. So
being the new kid in the school and a cheerleader, everybody wants to get to know you because they want to know what the deal is. Gotcha.
So I try to match something the listeners say, my guest says. So mine, which I think I've said on the podcast, I feel like I'm running out of things. I was a fairly weird kid in high school. I just kind of marched to the beat of my own drum there, with clothes and stuff like that. But kind of closely tied into yours, I was in drama and musicals in high school. So again, not the special forces operator athlete person. That was definitely not me in high school. So I was in the drama productions of the musicals, and most of it was I kind of enjoyed the people that were there, and worked all right for the ladies too. Again, because you're in a close environment with a lot of females, and then some of the males are less interested in women than you.
Exactly.
So that helped.
It really does.
Narrows the pool a little bit. So, yeah. All right. Again, Richard, thanks for coming on. For our listeners, we talked a lot about mental endurance or mental strength and stuff for this episode. My newest book on endurance is out on Amazon. It's on hard copy and digital. If you want a signed copy, I think my author copies are back ordered. I don't know how that's possible, but I won't have that in the Strength and Speed online store probably for a couple more weeks. But if you want a copy now, it's on Kindle, and you can order a hard copy off Amazon. That title is On Endurance. You can find out a little bit more about it on my teamstrengthspeed.com website. And again, I pulled quotes and lessons learned from the podcast, from the last 200-ish episodes, and made kind of like a step-by-step guide. Here's how to improve endurance, kind of focused on the mental side of things. And then the big reason I wanted to get Richard on the podcast ASAP was because June 4th, 5th, come out to Tough Mudder, New England. I'm going to be doing a charity event. Normally I partner with Folds of Honor. This year I'm partnering with Infinite Hero Foundation. And the plan is to start with a normal Tough Mudder wave at Stratton Mountain on June 4th at 7:45, and then Everest the mountain. So I'm going to do the Tough Mudder course and then run while during like normal operating hours, and then run up and down the mountain like in the middle of the night to accumulate the height of Everest over the course of probably take about 30 hours, to be honest with you. So that is the plan. That is the fundraiser. Bobby Ross will be there shooting film for it. I know I got Daniel Leonard flying out to pace me also. Looking for more pacers. I know I got Cutler Holland, another strength and speed guy, coming out to pace me. And anyone who wants to come out, you're welcome. You have to sign up for Tough Mudder if you want to pace during normal Tough Mudder hours. If you want to pace me in the middle of the night, you don't have to sign up for Tough Mudder. And again, just like normally we do, a $50 donation gets you a belt buckle for the OCR Everest And if you can't make it out to the event, there's a virtual event option. Again, head over to teamstrengthspeed.com, look for the info on there as far as how to participate in the virtual event. But basically, you're doing 1/10. So you're doing about 28 obstacles and about 1/10 the height of Everest as fast as you can. And then it'll be loosely competitive. We'll send gold, silver, bronze buckles in addition to the normal participant buckle to anyone that wants to participate. Again, just requires a small donation. And all the money you donate goes to Infinite Hero Foundation. I don't take any of that. Again, I pay for the buckles essentially out of book sales and other sales from my website, and just kind of eat that cost and use that to raise money for Infinite Hero Foundation. Plus, we'll have Becca from Infinite Hero Foundation at Tough Mudder New England. So we'll have like a booth there, and definitely stop by, say hi, make a donation. She's got some swag to give away. You can earn a buckle, all that good stuff. Okay. I think that's about it. Richard, thanks again for coming on.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun. And we'll keep in touch, and we'll talk again. And then hopefully Infinite Hero Honor Challenge comes back next year. And we would, love to have you back out at another location, because it was super cool to see like a recipient of another combat veteran kind of like out there telling his story. I really enjoyed that, and I think the cadets did too.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I had a blast out there. I can't participate it anymore just because of my limitations, but it's always fun to get out there and just see it and participate. So
yeah, right on. All right, we will catch you later. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you soon.